Welcome to the first balanced snapshot for the Bazaar. A meta breakdown for an unreleased game? Well, why the hell not? And more importantly, this will give us our first snapshot into how the new design team are going to be handling balance updates both now and in the future. So, let's take a look. The way the game is currently balanced gives us exceptionally short or exceedingly long battles, something that no one really wants to see. We're supposed to be playing battles of roughly 10 to 15 seconds, but you naturally try to specialise your build, and end up being in one of these two extremes. The design team has taken a pass at balancing this out, to bring battle duration in towards the centre, and make the extreme scenarios a rarity. This has supposedly been achieved through a number of balance changes. The stronger effects, such as a weapon firing at the start of combat, has been more specialised. As an example, now only working on, let's say, small items, so as to not include more powerful larger items, such as scythe or sniper rifle. If you own an item, traditional merchants will now also no longer offer you that item in their store, meaning that in the majority of games, you will not be able to get duplicate items. So, no more quadruple throwing knives, no more lemonade stand stacking health. And, speaking of health, the health pools have been brought towards the centre too, starting and ending on a more average level of health to avoid those extremely long drawn out matches. Items have had their costs scaled completely differently. We saw items ranging from 2 to 12 gold, and the player in the gameplay we saw had nearly 800 gold in their hand. And lastly, there has been a tweaking of the encounter table to reinforce what at least I already felt was already in place. Powerful events will be rare at the start of the game when merchants are most common, and these events will become more common in the later days where regular merchants become more of a rarity, with monsters kind of being stable throughout it all, so you can still get gold to afford these wonderful things. For a full detailed overview, check the main video from Eric and the Bazaar team linked below. But what does that mean for our two classes so far? What have we seen from their builds that will be changing in the future? Vanessa was the main contributor to those instant win games. She had a lot of different ways to instantly trigger weapons, and at least 2 if not 3 ways of killing quickly or instantly. This is something we've come to associate with Vanessa, seeing it even last year with her insta-killing sniper rifle build, but now seeing it more commonly with throwing knife builds or powder keg burn builds. Eric specifically told us that some of these items that instantly trigger others will still exist, but become more specific, detailing in the video that they might only work with small items. So this means Vanessa's small item builds, both the aforementioned powder keg and throwing knife builds, would still work. They would still instantly trigger. However, the scythe or sniper rifle builds will need a new way to trigger early. We already saw a bit of this with items like holsters, which at the start of the fight uses adjacent small items. So on that account, Vanessa can still insta-kill, right? Well, maybe not. The balance change that affects Vanessa the most is the decision to remove most methods of obtaining duplicate items. If you already own an item, normal item merchants will no longer show you that item, meaning there are only very obscure ways, such as the mirror merchant, for you to gain a second copy of an item, let alone a third or fourth. Most of Vanessa's insta-kill builds revolve around stacking throwing knives, and either adding more damage components to them, such as cannonball, or making them burn with incendiary rounds and then doubling it with powder keg. With this balance change, you will no longer be able to stack throwing knives. For anyone that doesn't know, these deadly knives trigger when you use a weapon, using one of their 4 ammo and dealing damage. But if you have 2 or more of these throwing knives, they trigger one another, using all charges immediately for an immense amount of damage. With that method of triggering all of your throwing knives now dead in the water, Vanessa builds will either see a huge shift to perhaps aquatic or sniper rifle, or they will adapt and find new ways to trigger throwing knives. If they have incendiary rounds, then pairing it with a blunderbuss, which triggers when you apply burn to your opponent, will cycle through all of your ammo. Or you can simply use a revolver, which is like throwing knives but a bit more expensive and has 6 ammo. But in any case, we are now trying to specifically search for more items before our combo starts to really be super effective. Whereas before, your other options could be a stand-in until you got all your knives. There is now no real alternative. You have to make do with a rubbish build until you combine all of these pieces of Exodia to reach the heights that she once had. Overall, this will be healthy for Vanessa. You won't just have to add weapons until you have the perfect storm of throwing knives and either burn or ammo. You will now more likely have to play the hand you are given, synergize on the go, pivoting into an insta-kill build only if you find 2 or 3 of the multiple components you will need. And, in my personal opinion, that's pretty much how it should be. Just as Vanessa was the main class causing issues with battles being over too quickly, Pygmalien is the cause for battles being too long and basically boring. The typical Pygmalien builds we have seen involve stacking as much health as physically possible, then doing whatever the hell else you want with your spare slots. You could combo with luxury tents for crazy healing, lion cane for crazy damage, or just add more health. So long as you could eat the burst damage from a Vanessa build, you would win when the sandstorm kicked in. So, what will change for Pygmalien builds going forward? Well, Eric told us with the duplicate items being harder to find, that health was also being brought into a more average range, suggesting that your starting health will be higher, something Reynad told us they were playing with quite a few weeks ago now, and your higher health ranges are going to be brought down to an agreeable and killable level. This one is a bit more of a mystery. We aren't entirely sure how it will happen, but my best guess, based on Eric's wording of bringing health down, would be that the numbers of health increase items are being tuned down overall, and perhaps even the free spell offered at the end of each day to add to your maximum health will be made a temporary buff. I'd actually personally like to see a sort of healing potion in this slot instead of a max health boost for folks who like to play the PvE battles a lot, and they can opt into this if they took a bit too much damage before the final fight. Anyway, what does this actually mean for Pygmalien builds? Well, they should have to be a bit more coherent now. Previously, you could reach incredibly high health pools by comboing Lemonade Stand with items like Monocle and Pinata, which gave you fodder to sell for yet more boosts. I would speculate now that you will need to align those combos if you hope to achieve a stall build. However, with Vanessa also being tuned down, we now have other options for viable builds, including more stalling builds. You can look at things like freezing, healing, regeneration, and shielding, alongside having your big health pool, because it's being brought down and it will need that extra assistance wherever you can find it. All of this will be needed because you can no longer stack more of the same item and easily reach those incredible levels of health. In a recent piece of gameplay from Reynad, we saw him reach unprecedented heights with Pygmalien's health pool from having 2 lemonade stands, doubling his health gain from each item sold. But that will be no more. Or at least, it'll be a very rare occurrence. And overall, that's what I'm excited for, and something Reynad, Ben, and even the new designers seem to keep in the back of their minds at all times. These crazy heights. The insta-kill builds, the million health builds, they're all technically still possible. Because we're only going to face the same player a maximum of once per run, it doesn't matter if we come across an impossible to beat build. It's just 1 loss out of 10. But when you get that chance to play the insta-kill build, when you see the Mirror Merchant and can create the most OP build you've ever seen, that will create such a great high for you that you'll remember for, well, at least maybe the coming day. Meanwhile, everyone else has much more balanced games to enjoy on a day-to-day basis, thanks to these other changes. Let me know what you thought of this little breakdown. Obviously, these will be much more impactful changes after we get the game, but I wanted to test the waters and thought it might be fun to record for you all. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the channel and enjoy the content. A lot of bizarre things will be coming out here, especially as we get closer to the launch date. I've been Games Greg, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.
I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else than your machine.